CJI 2, we're going to be covering the extremely controversial match between Giancarlo Bodoni, the ADCC 2024 world champion, and Taylor Perlman from Team Americas, which is most commonly known for being coached by Greg Souders, the ecological guy. I'm going to be doing a video on ecological training, as in the results you get from it, not what anyone says about it, their opinions, or what Greg Souders has read, but simply their results put next to other training on average, which doesn't lie. So Coach Danaher chose Giancarlo here, and Greg Souders Taylor. Seems like Giancarlo's playing guard initially, playing a low knee shield here, blocking the far side crossface. Looks like Taylor dropped into a leg lock here, try to get an inside Senkaku, trying to find the inside heel hook. Giancarlo rolled out of that one. Taylor lost the knee line, and now they're both standing. Giancarlo always has that really low stance, and he seems very strong in the way that, you know, if you make the mistake of tying your fingers and interlacing with him, that he's going to give you problems. So now Taylor's playing guard, and he's playing sort of like a lasso, foot under the armpit kind of guard, where he's just trying to frame away for now, keep the head away of Giancarlo, pushing the head down and away, collar tying. Looks like he's trying to enter in on that leg on the far side. He has double tricep grips, lasso again, interlacing the leg. This seems to be a very common theme of guard retention, especially now that it's stayed around in the common meta. Just lassoing in the leg, which is funny because it's one of the only techniques that is transferable from gi to no gi this well, to this extent. So it seems like Taylor is almost starting to invert a little bit. Giancarlo's going for a leg drag. Taylor's in on the leg here. Almost had a cross Ashi right there. Again, inside lasso position, retaining guard, still in half guard, sort of like a high knee shield here. Giancarlo is high head camping. His hips are lower than his head. His left leg is posted on the mat. He's trying to put all his weight on Taylor so that Taylor gets exhausted and that his frames get weaker and weaker as the match progresses. Taylor's framing under Giancarlo's far armpit now. It looks like he was about to invert for a second. Taylor's constantly looking for that inversion. It's pretty clear to see. He is a very inclined leg locker from the way that his game is set up. Giancarlo's backing away. He's making sure to be very careful as far as the leg entries and the way that he passes, so that he makes sure he is as least susceptible to leg locks as possible. He's smashing down the knee shield now. Taylor's responding with going ahead and inverting. He's in on the leg once more, loses it. Giancarlo spins out. It's super hard to maintain the knee line, especially if you don't prioritize that a lot in your training, especially at these higher levels. Everyone's slippery. It's getting sweaty. It's halfway through the match now. These are 8-minute rounds for the quintet format. More of a butterfly half being played by Taylor now. More friendly to leg lock entries. Giancarlo's trying to have a V grip constantly on that butterfly hook to prevent elevation. Taylor's doing a good job of making sure that his inside leg framing with the knee, doesn't get smashed by Giancarlo. Doing a good job of making sure he keeps pummeling his legs to the inside position constantly, no matter how much lateral movement Giancarlo has or how much framing pressure he's putting right now with his high head inside camping. just because he knows that he is going for that leg lock. It's clear that Taylor is getting tired now. The match is sort of slowed down. I doubt that Giancarlo is too exhausted. I'm not sure the conditioning that he worked on for this match specifically, but we've seen matches where he's had significantly higher levels of cardio and higher sporadic explosive outputs without getting tired into the match, which is 5 minutes so far. So I think Giancarlo is still good on the gas. He's just waiting to save his explosiveness for when he really needs it. He's shin pinning that leg of Taylor, bottom leg, passing to half. Taylor has a straight ashi. He reaps, going for the outside heel hook. And Taylor, right here, this was the controversy. So we're going to back up. Did you catch that? Let's watch this transition one more time. So Taylor, let's watch the entry. He has the reap there. Okay. So we're still in half guard here. Taylor has one leg on the inside and one wrapping foot on the outside, sort of like a De La Hiva if he brings his left leg behind Giancarlo's right hamstring. And so we see right here his bottom leg, right leg of Taylor got flattened out for a second, and he's looking to invert. He inverts, he's in on the leg, and he's going to spin through. He spins through, and now he has an Arimi Ashi. From the Arimi Ashi, he's blocking the knee of Giancarlo's far side leg, so his secondary leg, because as we know, 90% of the resistance in leg locks is from the other leg. Okay, and then he throws the other leg over, as in his wrapping foot, bringing it to the inside of Giancarlo's legs, instead of posting it on the hip in a traditional Arimi Ashi. This creates a reaping action and is defined as the inside Ashi position by Danaher and that crowd. And so he reaps. Now a simple turn, a shift of Taylor's knees from west to east will go ahead and expose Giancarlo's heel for the outside heel hook. And notice here how Taylor, with his inside leg, his right leg in this instance, is hooking behind Giancarlo's left knee. Just so Giancarlo can't do any sort of backstepping or just create a ton of movement in general before addressing that problem at the very least. And as we can see from the wincing on Taylor's face, he's really going in on that outside heel hook. Now, I'm not exactly sure how close his left elbow is to his rib cage, because that is a very big determinant of how tight your heel hook is and your leg locking pressure. Giancarlo is currently pinning Taylor's right leg to the floor, meaning that Taylor does not have the maximum amount of strength he can have with his ashigarami, knees pinched together, pointing the opposite direction, which would be left in this instance compared to the way that the heel hook is moving, which is from west to east. So his ashigarami should be pointing to the west optimally. But again, he does have an inside ashi, and as we know, if Giancarlo can go ahead and turn his knee down to the mat before Taylor can follow him in the roll, Giancarlo can go ahead and simply kick out. But Taylor is going wrist to wrist on this, which is better than having a gable grip or going palm to palm. Still would probably prefer getting a figure four grip here, just because it is an unorthodox situation where Giancarlo is not broken down to a hip. Anytime someone's not broken down to a hip, instead of traditional heel hooking mechanics, you want to focus on some of the things that still apply, like having your wrist directly under their heel, your elbow pressed nice and tucked to your rib cage to create that tight pressure, your forearm aligned with the sole of their foot. And you want to extend and have a figure four grip instead of a wrist to wrist, and looking behind your own shoulder and working on the finer mechanics there when you're stationary. But going a little bit too further into it, just want to break down for you guys exactly what Giancarlo would be feeling at this moment. Okay, so now we see that Taylor transitioned into an outside ashigarami, still holding on to that outside heel hook with a wrist-to-wrist grip. We're going to backtrack right over here to where Taylor reaps, and he's going to set up a transition where as soon as Giancarlo goes ahead and rolls through, he went to the cross hip ashi from the inside ashi transition there. And shortly after, when Giancarlo goes to roll again, when his left foot approaches the floor, what Taylor is going to do to make sure that the roll doesn't keep on going and that he can break Giancarlo right here is lift his hips off the mat and get on his left shoulder. If Taylor can do this, his weight will be extremely heavy for Giancarlo to just keep rolling. But again, he's going for that extension right here. Okay, going for that extension. This heel hook is still unorthodox. He probably knows that he needs to go to a figure four for situations like this and that it would be better. But you know, there's no time to go ahead and transition into that. He already has the wrist to wrist, and this is where we see the tap from Giancarlo. So I'm going to slow it down for you guys. He's really ripping on that outside heel hook. No mercy here. Tries to get on the shoulder as we see right here. You see how he just lifted his hips right there? Tried to get on his shoulder, lift his hips so Giancarlo wouldn't keep rolling, but Giancarlo is able to go ahead and at least get Taylor on his back, which is, you know, a more forgiving breaking mechanic than if Taylor was on his shoulder and his hips were lifted off the mat. And Giancarlo tapped right there. That's what many people thought. That tap right there on Taylor's left leg. And as you can see, after Giancarlo tapped, Taylor's expression is simply one of letting go of the heel hook. His ashi garami loosens up. Now Giancarlo's already making V grips on the leg, okay? Making V grips on the leg, pretending like the judge didn't see that, and going straight into the match. Now, from Taylor's expression, holding out the one finger, the index finger right in Giancarlo's face, he's saying, wait a minute, you just tapped, buddy. And Giancarlo is going for maybe like a heist here. Yeah, he heisted, holding the leg with a V grip on his arm, trying to build head height. And right over here, Taylor's looking straight at the ref, basically saying he tapped, the match is over. What is the ref going to do about this? He is going to wait until Giancarlo starts passing. Giancarlo moves to his left, and the match continues for a little bit. You can see the crowd's expressions. Some of them are in awe because they believed that Giancarlo tapped. And then, okay, officially here, the ref stops it. You see his hand sign. He says timeout. Giancarlo's already contesting this decision. He's saying, no, I didn't tap. And then Taylor is trying to build hype from the crowd just so it solidifies his win and his stance that Giancarlo really did tap to him. As you can see from the crowd's expression, they are extremely hyped for him and they probably are on his side. Now, again, we can go on and on about, you know, the replays that they had, and, you know, the judges officially made a decision that yes, Giancarlo did indeed tap. You see here, Taylor was really in on that outside heel hook. He had his outside ashi garami right there, both legs on Giancarlo's right side. And Giancarlo, it looked like, tapped his left knee, basically implying that he wanted to stop the match. And we can see that Taylor's ashi garami loses pressure. We can see that in the replay, Giancarlo goes and he taps. Now, Giancarlo was interviewed by this lady right here. Her name slips me at this time. Please don't be mad at me. But she is like the main interviewer and does the, you know, interviews with Craig Jones leading up to CJI 2. I don't really care too much about those. But as we can see, Giancarlo is getting interviewed. So let's switch it back to normal speed and listen to what he has to say, and then the crowd's reaction and the common sentiment. So the judges already ruled him out.
Alex Wendling is with Giancarlo.
Standing by with your two-time ADCC champ. It went to the decision. I know that's probably not what you guys anticipated, but we got to talk about that tap out. Do you feel like there needs to be a more definitive criteria to call a tap out like that official?
I mean, I think everybody in the arena knows that that wasn't a tap out if you just look at it.
Instantly start booing him. And this is so loud to the point where it isn't like a subtle UFC. They kind of boo him in the background of a press conference, and you hear it in, in a very minuscule fashion. This is, you can clearly hear the entire crowd booing him, and Giancarlo is smiling because he's uncomfortable.
But
he's kind of lost for words because he sees that everyone disagrees with him. And I mean, the poor guy may actually be right in this situation. We're going to also take a look at Gordon's response watching this match and what he had to say right after. But for now, let's see what Giancarlo has to say.
If you are in the crowd tonight and you did think it was a tap out, because
I think the important thing.
So this lady thought it would be a good idea right in front of the ADCC 2024 world champion, and you can see this guy in the background, how shocked he is from what she just said, to have the audience make expressions and noises if they think that it really was a tap out. And Giancarlo's standing right here, like, he doesn't appreciate that. He's already, in a controversy as is with the tap that, he was scored out of. He doesn't need all this negative attention and, salt in the wound, if you will. So he instantly changes the subject and wants to win the people over with making a statement of good sportsmanship.
Is that we made it to day 2, and, our team came out and we did the best that we could, and now here we're in.
Okay, so yes, great speech by Giancarlo. He did go ahead and flip the script and turn that around. But now we're going to take a look at what Gordon had to say. So Gordon Ryan officially posted, "I advised my entire team against this bias, bullshit event. As the team competing picked the refs, judges, and commentators, never in history has a tap in any rule set ever consisted of a single tap on the body. It is always 2, 3, or more taps. But of course, Crooked Craig called it as a sub, stacking anything he can against the boys in his bullshit promotion. If you're asking why I will never be involved in this empty and failed event, this is one of the reasons." So, he captioned it absolute joke. He's not satisfied whatsoever with the result of the match between Giancarlo and Taylor. We saw the reaction from the crowd and the sentiment that they had towards this sequence and whether or not Giancarlo tapped. But I can confidently tell you that based on leg locking knowledge, and of course, this is a very high stakes competition, a lot of money on the line, many eyeballs watching. Giancarlo is an extremely tough competitor. He's an ADCC champion, meaning that, if he has to let something break, he is going to let something break. Now, within reason, right? Heel hooks, they can be brutal, especially if the force is applied properly. The person breaking you knows what they're doing with the mechanics, which I'm not saying that Taylor doesn't here. I'm sure if Taylor had all the time in the world, he would know exactly the mechanics to apply maximum force. We saw he tried to hold Giancarlo on the hip here. Look. So plants his legs on the floor. As you saw, his hips just elevated. He's trying to get on this shoulder. Now what he needs to do is initially he needs to tuck his shoulder in a little bit. Now he does need to look over his left shoulder around the corner to apply tons of pressure with this position right here, where his hips are elevated off the mat, pinching his knees to his left, or what would be west, and applying heel hook pressure by tucking in his left elbow as much as he can to his side, which it seems like he's doing a fair enough job at doing that already. And then, like I said, looking behind his shoulder and then extending his upper body as much as possible while maintaining the pressure of his knees pointing the opposite way, and his torso slowly rotating after he's made that extension and looking behind him from west to east. And that would truly be the strongest breaking pressure. Now, everything changes because of a few things. Giancarlo's left hand is in between Taylor's legs. This causes major interference for Taylor's ashigarami. So just the portion of his legs applying pressure and control. But as we can see, Giancarlo or it doesn't really even look like Giancarlo scooped Taylor's leg all that much. So let's take a look at it. He did have that hand in for interference. He voluntarily took that hand out, and it seems like Taylor was the one who wanted to keep rolling here and really rip this submission. Now, there's a few things. Ripping a submission is not only risky because people can get injured, but also it is not the method of maximum force when it comes to breaking technique. It is a method of, okay, if I spin faster than you, I'm going to get a scream tap and you might get really hurt, but this is a high stakes situation, so I am going to do everything I can and try to get the tap that way. So Taylor voluntarily, upon watch back of that, decided to not have his hips elevated and his shoulder on the mat. Instead, he wanted to break Giancarlo from his back, which is going to be significantly harder. He's going to need a figure 4 grip, and instead of regular heel hooking mechanics, he's going to focus on extending the leg as much as possible, as in making sure that this crease in Giancarlo's leg, when he has that figure 4, his right hand goes under, grabs his left bicep under Giancarlo's heel right here. He has to sort of follow that path to break Giancarlo in an unoptimal position. And this is exactly what tells me, from this caliber of competition, that the tap from Giancarlo right here, because this right here does not look like much pressure. This does not look like a very intense heel hook. Look at the angle of Giancarlo's knee. If you take your own knee right now, your own right knee, go ahead and keep your knee in place while slightly internally rotating your own toes, which is going to externally rotate your heels, right? And you can get this exact angle without much discomfort. So it really doesn't look like something that would be, extremely of pressure. Taylor's Ashigarami right here is sloppy. He does not have the proper, knee pinching ability, the tightness, the direction shift, and he doesn't have any of that going for him. His legs are simply just a means of keeping Giancarlo where he is as he tries to finish this lock right here. And we can see that he was really squeezing. He was wincing, and he thought he had it. But as soon as he starts going there is no shift from Giancarlo's face. He doesn't look like, he was nervous and he really intended for someone not to notice that tap and then started going back into, a guard pass or anything like that. It was very natural looking from Giancarlo. Again, this guy had perfect breaking mechanics right there. If he just tucked his abs a little bit and made sure that he stayed on his shoulder just so he can pinch his knees a little bit more. His right leg is a little bit facing towards the ceiling too much. He needs to sort of pinch it so that it's clamping down on Giancarlo's quadriceps and making sure that the Ashigarami stays tight. These mechanics probably I would rate 6.5 out of 10, which is, again, in a competition scenario. I'm not saying this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He does. He's a great leg locker, world level competition. But in an intense situation like this, no, he had very much so suboptimal breaking mechanics. And it's an outside heel hook, for crying out loud. It's not even an inside heel hook, which would be even that much more devastating. And we'd be like, well, we don't know. The pressure can come on way more at a rapid rate. So do I think that it's a tap? Giancarlo instantly started heisting? No. Conclusion is, I don't believe so. Giancarlo, he's an ADCC champ. He may have some sort of ego factor in not wanting to tap to this guy, but I think that he was clearly robbed. Even Coach Danaher looks a little bit surprised here and is, talking to whoever that guy is next to him, probably about how he doesn't believe that that's an actual tap. But of course, Danaher, he's very stoic in the sense that he's not the kind of coach that's going to yell out at the ref saying, yo, that was bullshit. My team member didn't tap, my student didn't tap. He's not that kind of guy. He probably already knows that they're up on the points anyways and that they still have a good chance of winning, which they did. And I'm going to do a whole video on Greg Souders and his teaching methodology and how his team performed against. I just saw Craig right there. That was great. Just look at Craig. Every time I look at this guy, I just, I can't help but laugh, and in a good way. He makes people happy, his whole persona appearance. But yeah, gonna do a video on Greg Souders and his team right over there. We have Jake Shields here and many other faces that you may recognize in the audience in this whole promotion. Make sure if you haven't seen the first day of CJI that you go ahead and do that. The finals are today at the time that this video is being recorded, but gonna do many more videos and match breakdowns like this. So if you enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more.